to Rules of the Game podcast. My name is Butch Porter, your illustrious host, and with me today is the beautiful and talented Jessica Hausberger. How are you, Jessica?
I'm good, Butch. How are you today?
I'm good. Well, look, the reason I got Jessica on is I'm going to be interviewing hundreds and hundreds of women over the country to join my podcast as a co-host. We're going to go through about, it's going to take about 4 hours, Jessica, and I'm going to ask you a lot of really deep personal questions about, what really makes you tick, how you think. And once I've determined that you're worthy of being a co-host of the Rules of the Game podcast, then we'll bring you on to the next level, which I think involves Air Force One, if I'm not mistaken. So
this sounds really intense, but I understand why it's such an in-depth process, and I came prepared today. So let's do this.
No, anybody who knows me at all knows I'm too lazy to actually interview multiple people to find as a potential co-host. So we are gonna toy with the idea, though, Jessica, of making this a regular thing, because Jessica has this devil's advocate sort of approach to topics, kind of like I do. We've had many conversations over the years, and so we're gonna see if it works. But what's today's topic, Jessica?
Today's topic is we are going to review and discuss and critique this Netflix film called The Social Dilemma.
Yes.
Which I watched about a week ago. You watched it, a few days ago?
Yeah, within the last week. The social disaster movie, is that something like that? Is it like a satire? No, it was, I watched it and I actually have some notes on it. I should probably, I don't know, do something crazy and pull those notes up, because I did make some notes on it. I realized not too long ago that I hardly ever take notes because I never read them, which is kind of a thing. So,
but maybe it helps you to remember it and crystallize it a little bit.
Yeah, well, my favorite part, and I'll let you, because you've talked about it a little bit as well. My first impression of it was, you remember Bernie Goldberg back in the day, that he did this thing about media bias. He was like a CBS guy for years and years, and he wrote this book called Bias, and it was about how the media is, intensely, extremely biased on one side. But one of the things he said is that it's not a conspiracy. It's not like they get together and they decide that we're going to tilt everything this way. It just happens because of the way the schools are set up and the way that the sort of funnel, gets people to those positions, and they all think the same way. And so it just becomes this thing. And I think my first impression of it from the beginning was that all the bad things that we're going to talk about social media, I don't think these guys got together and decided, what we need to do? We need to make, the next drug for, Generation Z or whatever, right? They never, did you get that impression too? It's not like none of these people set out to do that.
I mean, I think when we look at technology in general, we never anticipate some of the negative outcomes of technology, but human beings, since that industrial age, our society has changed so much, but our physical bodies are the same that they've been for thousands of years. And so it's just interesting to watch us try to adapt to technology that's so rapidly advancing, while we're still pretty much the same physical bodies we've been for so long. That's what's interesting to me.
Yeah. So, so you believe the guy when he says, the guy that invented the like button, like when he says, we just wanted to add love and happiness to the world, right?
Right.
I mean, I think he really believes that, right? I think he did. So What was it that struck you about it? What was the main net, if you will? I used to have a friend locally. He used to say that all the time. Every time I called him, well, the net is. So what do you think? What was your bottom line from it? What did you get from it?
Well, so the documentary definitely affirmed some things that I was already tuned into and somewhat aware of and thinking about in terms of how social media impacts us as individuals and definitely impacts young people as their brains are still forming. But then the documentary even takes it a little further and really kind of makes a statement about how it's impacting us as a culture in America, and then even takes it a step further and really shows how Facebook can be a dangerous political tool used
Sure.
internationally,
Yeah.
even to like, you know, really have a huge impact on countries politically, in a
Well,
detrimental way.
did you see Tim, do you ever watch, do you do the Apple stuff? Are you an Apple person at all?
Yeah, yeah, I'm doing this
Okay.
on an Apple phone right now.
Oh, okay. Well, Tim Cook had his I like to call him Tim Cook just for the heck of it, just to keep everybody on their toes. No, Tim Cook had his what's it called, the keynote or whatever for their new iPad and iPad Air and a couple other things. But the big focus of it was the healthcare app and the watch. Like the Apple Watch was like their new. And I have a friend here locally. His name's Paul, who was a walking commercial for the Apple Watch, right? But at the end of that keynote was this little the healthcare part and the watch part was this little blurb about how, hey, Singapore is the first government that has incentivized its citizens to better monitor their health using the Apple Watch. I
Hmm.
mean, what could go wrong,
What
right?
could go
I
wrong?
remember when the Apple Watch came out and they were showing the little heartbeat thing. It wasn't like a health thing. It was just oh, that sounds really cool. You could input your heartbeat, into a message or whatever, saying you love that or something like that. And there was a satire news article that came out that says NSA is eternally grateful to Tim Cook and Apple for letting us know exactly what things make people's heart beat faster. Right, really excited. So anyway,
Right.
but it is technology always starts from a place of goodness and ends up and very often ends up. I'm not a Luddite by any stretch, but I think there is. I left it, and I guess we'll come back to that. But one of the things that I thought was interesting um, was the moment where the guy who created, what was it, Center for Humane Technology, whatever, he
Yeah.
created this organization for the cause, but he did that as a result of going and talking to his boss at Google. I guess he was at Google, right? And nothing really happened, right?
Right.
And I didn't see an indication that he got fired or anything, but I was thinking of Jerry Maguire. I immediately thought of Jerry Maguire sending out a memo, right? It was just a memo. It wasn't a mission statement. It was just a memo, right? And because what was it? It was less clients, less money, less everything, because the bosses will love that, right? Why wouldn't they? So basically he was questioning the motive, right? The motive is profit, and
Right.
the engines are created to create more profit. That's what they were driven to do. The guy from Pinterest was one of the, and I know that he was also, dreamy, right?
Everything about Facebook and Pinterest and Instagram and Twitter, everything about these social media sites is designed to make us want to go back for more and more and more throughout the day. We literally get this dopamine release from our brains that keeps us addicted, whether it's a light addiction or a heavy addiction based on your personal, physiological tendencies. All of us have had that experience where we've had our cell phones sitting next to us on a table, and we just have this kind of slight urge to pick it up and check it, which I
I'm
do
looking for mine right
everything.
now as you're talking about. Where's my phone?
I'm
Holy
staring
crap!
at mine right now. So here's a list
You
of
have this
things that,
connection. You're fine. You'll be all right.
okay. So I wanted to look up, for what extent of time does the average American go on social media a day? Would you like to
Yeah, go
conjure a
ahead.
guess? Well, what do you think?
Oh, the
What's your
average
guess?
on social
The
media,
average
not on the
American.
phones, but on social media.
Just on social media alone.
3 hours.
3 hours is a really great guess. And
Thanks.
the most recent scientific studies are indicating 2 hours and 24 minutes. a
That's a
day
lot. It's
on
still a
social
lot.
media. Now, of course, young people between the ages of 18 and 24, it's a larger number, but it averages out to 2 hours and 24 minutes a day. That works out to 876 hours a year, which is approximately, if you're looking at 16-hour days, that's 55 days a year that people are spending on social media. So if
I
you
just
and
want to
I
be
were,
I just want to be clear that I probably spend that much time on social media, but I'm not watching videos. I'm commenting and
you're not
writing
watching cat
novels.
videos.
That's right. I'm writing novels worth of material trying to educate the masses. I'm just
You
saying
really
that's
are, but
that's how I'm spending my time on Facebook.
and you are very eloquent. Every time I see one
And
of your messages,
and
I'm
I
just
will
like, I
add
don't
to
even have
that.
to comment.
That's right. I will add to that that watching the cat videos would probably be a better investment of my time.
It
I had to
might be.
guess. I
Well,
mean,
when you look
easy.
at that 55 days a year that people spend
That's a
on social
lot.
media,
It's almost
55
2 months a
16-hour
year.
days, it's
That's
almost
crazy.
2 months a year. So if you and I were to live for 40 more years, which I plan on doing that, then that
Oh
would
yeah,
be
easy.
6 years of my life I would spend on social media. And so if we as a society are going to do something we're going to take 6 years of our life and commit every single waking minute of 6 years to an activity, then we really need to look at that activity and ask ourselves,
Right.
what am I getting out of this? And is this something that is really edifying me and making my life more
But
joyful and
okay,
more
Jessica, but
fulfilled?
hang on a second. I mean, we do all kinds of things that that don't don't add value to our lives. It's not like we weren't wasting time before social media came along,
Well,
right?
let me suggest this. This is
Okay.
my problem with my cell phone is this. First of all, let's just say that we don't just use our cell phones for social media. Our cell phones is where we take pictures, we edit pictures, we do our Zoom calls, we check our emails. We go on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, check our text messages, do our phone calls. We do so much on our phones. Our phones are a constant source of interruption and distraction, and social media is probably the number one cause of that. And so for me, it's not the amount of time that I'm spending on my cell phone
Okay.
or social media, it's the number of disruptions. It's the
Okay.
lack of being present in my day. So for example, like if I end up checking my phone 40 times throughout the day, those 40 distractions add up to more than just the time spent. It
Well,
disrupts
I
me and
think
distracts me from a more intentional life.
okay, I get that. And we're talking about two different issues, right? One is the amount of time, and I mean, you've laid this out, but one is the amount of time. The other is the ability to focus on things we should be, we would
Yes.
like to be focused on.
It
So,
robs you from being present in the moment.
right. Well, it can rob you from being present with the people around you too, right? Your relationships can suffer, right? Is kind of
Sure, sure.
yeah. And so yeah, I can see that. I mean, the part of it that I think was the most moving about and it's probably because I grew up, with three little sisters and I'm raising a daughter, but the middle schooler who could not go 5 minutes without her phone and broke the jar or whatever to open up because those of you who haven't seen it, there's a scene where the mom takes this cookie jar that's designed to keep people out of the cookie jar, for certain amounts of time, and it has a timer on it with a lock, and so you set it for an hour or set it for a day or whatever, and it keeps you from eating more cookies. Well, she put all the phones in there and set a 1 hour timer for dinner, and 4 minutes in or less, the daughter, who's probably, I guess, a middle schooler, she's like 12, gets up, I gotta go get a fork, and breaks into the jar and runs off with her phone. And it was very and this is a dramatization part of the film, but it wasn't unbelievable, right? That's the
Right,
part. It wasn't like, I didn't find that surprising. And I also didn't
right.
find that it's surprising that she had body image issues at the age of 12.
Yes.
And that's a huge it's a huge thing. I mean, I think guys are being treated slightly differently with the social media thing. I think it's more, we don't have body image problems. We know that we're beautiful creations, and that everybody should want us, and all of that. So,
You're a
but
virtual
I'm just saying
gladiator.
the girl aspect, the body image aspect I thought was really interesting. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Which I have a friend who has a master's degree in psychology, and she's a school counselor, and her and I were having dinner about a year ago, and I said to her, I said, so look, what's the number one thing that you see as a guidance counselor? Why are kids coming into your office? And I imagined all these different things that she would say, but what she said was this. She said there's only one reason why kids come into my guidance counselor office now, and it's all girls, and it's all because of social media. It's 100%. She said, if there's one thing I can recommend, it's do not give your young female daughter a cell phone. I'll have to tell you that I watched this documentary with my soon-to-be 10-year-old daughter, who
Okay.
was glued to it. And at the end of the documentary, she turned to me and she said, Mom, thank you so much for loving me enough to not get me a cell phone. And she
Amen. Yeah.
meant it. That the movie just really is something I feel like you should watch with your kids between the ages of 8 and 11, when there's a lot of pressure to get a cell phone. This particular child, my one who's going to be 10 soon, has a little bit more of that addictive, hyper social personality.
Mm-hmm.
I probably will not get her a smartphone until she's 16 years old.
Yeah.
13 and 14 and 15 are extremely
Debatable.
critical moments for young
Yeah.
women. The last thing that
Yeah.
they need
Okay.
to be doing is spending 2, 3, 4 hours a day on Instagram. It is like the
My
last thing that
son,
they need to be doing.
yeah, my son didn't get one until 14.
Yeah.
He didn't get a cell phone. And actually, there's at the very end, not the very end, but close to the end, what's his name? Jonathan Haidt, who is, if you run in heterodox, sort of liberal center circles like myself, then you've heard the name. He does this Heterodox Academy thing. He was one of the authors of Coddling of the American Mind, which is a fantastic book about not just the social media aspect, but the entire sort of fragile psyches we're creating in our youth for the last almost a generation. Anyway, he had 3 suggestions. Don't let him get it until high school, right? So until they get 9th grade, no cell phone.
Oh yeah.
And keep it out of their bedrooms, period, at night. Like set a time, after 9 p.m., no devices in their bedroom, just take them all out. And then the third is whatever time, he didn't say a time, but whatever time you decide, just take it out of the bedrooms. And the third was cap the number of hours, and let them decide. And most kids will tell you, hey, however many hours except for my son is way too sneaky for that. He's 12, 15 hours, I mean, something like that. Perfectly. But when they're, if you ask them honestly, they'll usually come up with a time limit that makes sense. What's really tricky now, and is that kids are on the computers so much now for school. Here it's all Zoom school or whatever. There's no in-person school, and so that's made the device thing that much harder. But I think so that part I get, like the angst, and especially for kids, and the addiction part of it. I mean, I perfectly understand. I do think as adults we should have, hopefully we have enough positive sort of reinforcement to make us do the things we're supposed to do and understand when something is being addictive, because a lot of things can be addictive, right? So have you found that, do you consciously like gauge how much time you spend, or do you keep it away from you? Do you leave home without it, and stuff like that?
I'm actually very intentional. Like this morning I had to drive my 2-year-old to his little Mom's Day Out program, and I purposefully left my cell phone on the counter and didn't drive with it, just so that I could be away from it for 30 minutes. But these are some things that I've taken from after watching Social Dilemma. I was like, okay, I really need to crystallize some very specific habits my opinion is like, if you don't really get ultra specific about how you want to approach this, you really can't hold yourself accountable. If you just say, you know what, I want to be on social media less, it probably won't happen. And so there's a couple of things that I took from the film that I'm applying to my life right now. Number one is I did set a time limit. Facebook is really the drain for me. There's really no other social media site that I'm going on and spending a lot of time. It's Facebook for me, which is super nerdy. I wish I was cool and I was on
Most of
like
my
more of a
Facebook stuff is very nerdy. Yeah, I mean, it really is. So I mean,
mine
it's just
too.
it's a waste of time because I could be putting that energy elsewhere. But it's not.
Exactly.
There's not a lot of
That's
ad
my goal in life
opportunities.
now,
There's not a
is to
lot of
put it
ad
elsewhere.
opportunities for me to comment to somebody's really, dumb political post or whatever. I mean, they
Exactly.
just don't have. They
So
can't get to me that easily most of the time.
the number one thing I did is I set a time limit on my phone. You can go into your settings on an Apple phone and set a time limit where you
Sure.
put the apps on that time limit. I put all my social media apps on there and I set a 30-minute time limit. And so when
30
that
minutes
time
a
limit,
day.
30 minutes a day. Yeah.
All right. No wonder I never see you on Facebook anymore. Right.
So I'm setting 30 minutes a day. And yeah, and I do run some of my business on Facebook. So I
Sure.
really have to be careful to post it. It's very tempting to say, oh, I want to go back and see, if I got any response from this or that. Well, I try to not check in, but 2 or 3 times a day. So I've got the 30-minute limit. And then I'm also limiting myself to checking into Facebook 3 times a day. So I'm not checking it 30 times a day, which I have in the past. You just pop on there for 10 seconds, pop off. It's a distraction for me and a waste of time. And then number 3, when I'm on Facebook, I no longer will click on any advertising because that's also a time drain. Like they've
Yeah.
got my number, they know what I like, and they pop the ads in front of
That's
me,
right. They know
and I
your
click on
Amazon
them.
likes, right? They know what you're getting
Yep.
off of Amazon, right?
So one of 2 things happens when I click on that advertising. Number one, I buy something that I wouldn't have normally bought. It's called being a zombie. Like I don't want to be their
Is it though?
zombie.
I mean, let's back up a step. Okay, is it? I mean, would you have bought something like that? I mean, anyway. I mean, I guess if it's fashion, then
No,
I
no.
guess
The
that's
shirt
sort
that I
of.
have on right now, I bought off of Amazon because a Facebook ad was like, "You'll like this," and I'm like, "I do. I'll take it in this color and this
I think
color."
it's a lovely shirt. Well done. Right. So I think it was all worth it. I think you got a nice shirt, and
Maybe
it's
it
fine.
was,
Yeah.
but I'm
So
trying not to
I,
click on any advertising.
yeah, I do. I think that's a good because they have a goal, right? They have 3 goals, and they talked about this in the film. It's engagement, growth, and advertising, right? So
Yeah.
their job is to get you in, and then grow the number of hits they have in whatever direction that they're trying to send you, and then to advertise to the people who once they have you, they advertise to you. They once they know that they got you for a certain amount of time. I've got the team of engineers, and the way they dramatize it in the film it was like Inside Out, like behind
Yeah.
the screen there was these 3 engineers all played by the same actor, and they were moving and manipulating things to keep this teenage boy pulled into the screen. And then when they felt like they had him for long enough, they'd hit him with an ad, right? And sometimes the ad's not to buy anything. The ad is to go to a site and watch a video or whatever it is, right? Because that generates other ads in the long term. I think the most and looks like Jessica's video went out for a second, and that's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
That's okay.
I'm back.
No, but it's the most I think salient quote from the film, and it's to I guess one of your earlier points, and we'll get back to it, was from the guy with the white guy with the dreadlocks, the kind of
Oh my gosh, he
looking
was
dude.
hilarious. He was
Yeah,
my
he was
favorite.
great. He says, because they kept talking about what the problem is, and no one could say it. Like even the guy who created the Center for Humane Technology
Oh,
couldn't
I know.
say what's the actual problem. And he kind of hit everybody, and they went to the Pinterest guy, and then they went to the somebody else, and none of them. It was like these pauses, And so, but this guy says it's the gradual, slight, imperceptible change in your own behavior and perception. That
Yes.
is the product, right? So if you think about what that means from a political standpoint, then it's really no wonder why the Senate has, home dude, Zuckerberg up there, it seems like every couple months to grill him because the
That
amount of
quote
power
is
that they
worth
have.
repeating. I think you should say the quote
It's the
again.
gradual, slight, because people are saying you're the product, right? You're the product because if you're not paying for it, that means you're the product. But he says, no, you're not the product. It's the gradual, slight, imperceptible change in your own behavior and perception. That is the product. And so, and it's true. It's not that we're the product. It's just that what we do is the product. What we choose to do based on this manipulation is the product. I think some of that can have startling implications, especially for things that don't involve actually paid money. It's one thing to sell things. I'm not, people have been advertising, they've been figuring out a way to get to our wallets for, decades. And it doesn't really bother me that you bought a nice green shirt. And, what bothers me is that over a long period of time, over a large group of people, a percentage can be manipulated a certain way based on somebody's political, you know, predilections, if you will, right? And that can be a little disturbing. So
Yeah, I thought that quote was salient, as you put it. And there was also one more concept within the film that I think is worthy of mentioning, and it was, I think it was the ex vice president of Pinterest. The fairly attractive,
he was
tall,
dreaming,
dark
wasn't
hair.
he? Yes. Yes.
I think he got the job because he looked so pretty. But he, at one point, I think it was him who was saying, look, as Americans, we kind of all used to agree on a couple of things, but because we all have a different feed in our social media. Our feed is being curated to our own interests, and regardless of even how hard we try, our personal feeds are almost these little echo chambers, and we start to surround ourselves by people who believe the same things that we believe, have the same worldviews as us, and the same perceptions and the same microcosms within culture. And we begin to get a little bit of this tunnel vision, some people more than others. And we start to become almost shocked by people who have a different viewpoint than us. Almost shocked. People are like, I
Yeah,
can't
because
even
we're
believe you
so
think that.
insulated in our own little
Yes. And we start to
silos.
have these like two different, the political divide is so much deeper than it's been in the past. And some people will say, oh, it's because Barack Obama was president, or it's because of Donald Trump.
Yeah,
Or
it's
I
definitely
love when
Obama's
there's one
fault.
simple
Let's
answer to
blame
a
it.
problem,
Can we
right?
blame it all on Obama? That would be just so cool. It
It
would be easier,
depends.
right?
It
I will
depends what your
say,
Facebook
that
feed is.
the challenge with Barack Obama, and I'm not going to talk about, because I don't think any of this is his fault, really. The challenge with Barack Obama is he was supposed to, we had high expectations for a black president bringing us to a better place, and I think we expected a little too much of him. I'm not saying that he really I'm not saying he didn't make any mistakes. I'm just saying that we did expect a lot. We expected that one thing to bring us to a better space from a racial standpoint, and I think we were naive to expect that, right? To be honest. So I wouldn't say it's his fault per se. I would just say that our expectations were higher than they should have been. But what did you think about the part back to the kids implications? They kind of alluded to it, and I've had other conversations about this over the years, about the fact that teenagers are actually dating less. They're actually teenage sex is down. I'm assuming teenage pregnancy is down with it, and all those things, but it's at a cost, right? So do you have any thoughts on what that might mean? The whole like teenagers not actually dating anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Do you? Okay.
Of course. Well, I told one of my kids a really funny story. One year, my parents decided to homeschool us, just another form of torture in my childhood. I think I
Right,
was in
right. It
sixth
is
grade,
torture. Yeah.
and we went to this homeschool group, and we were in the homeschool group, and I got a phone call one day, and I was in sixth grade, so I was about 11 or 12 years old, and it was a boy in the homeschool group who wanted to take me out for a date. And so his parents and my parents arranged this date where we would meet at this movie theater. And the boy was extremely intentional. It was like he was learning how to do something. His parents were teaching him how to do it. And he took me to the movie theater. And then afterwards he said, there's a jewelry store next door. And it was this like little pawn shop jewelry store. So I'd like to take you there and let you pick out something. And I was like 11 or
Oh,
12 years old. And I went there and I picked out this little necklace and he bought it for me. And then he called me the next day to tell me that he had a really nice time with me and to ask me if I wanted to go out again sometime, at which time I said no.
no, that's
But
okay. Thank you for the
I
necklace,
was,
though.
I was telling my kids this story, and they just thought it was so cool. And what in retrospect, what this boy's parents were trying to do is they were trying to teach him how to date and how to date with a purpose and what
Right.
a man is supposed to do on a date. And yeah, that is completely gone. My thoughts on it as it relates to social media and technology is that people are too accessible. People are way too accessible. Why would you go out of your way to take a girl out on a date and spend time with her when you could have 20 conversations with 20 different women at your fingertips right then and there? I mean,
Sure.
it's too much accessibility.
Yeah, and it gets to and then when you get to college, it's the Tinder and the hookup culture, and
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
all
I mean,
that kind of
there's a
stuff.
lot of ground we could cover here.
Yeah, I think so.
Girls don't put out. I mean, that's the bottom line is girls need to stop putting out. We need to go back to the days where the men have to work for it.
Yeah, one of these days we'll have a conversation about this podcast I heard a while back. I don't know if it was even actually a podcast. This is before I started listening to podcasts,
We
which
could
I
just
felt
start our own
obligated.
podcast called the Put Out Podcast and just see where it goes.
I'm not. I have questions. Just say it. But it was somebody who's talking about rape culture on college campuses, right? And she basically was making the point that hookup culture is rape culture, right? It feeds upon itself. And this was not a right wing prude or anything like that. I mean, she was very serious that the hookup culture is what creates this dynamic where it cheapens it, right? It cheapens the transaction, of sex, and it gets it down to where girls only want to have sex with people they don't want to date, right? And the ones they do want to date, they don't want to have sex with because they want to be more traditional and hold off and get to know them and blah blah blah, which makes sense, except for the fact that they're having sex with strangers. And of course, what does that do to the men? Like, men pretty much only get to have sex with people they're not going to date that aren't interested in them. So
This
it
is
sends these
confusing.
weird messages. The whole hookup culture sends these weird messages, and I think a lot of it does start, and I think it's intensified and reinforced through the social media concept.
Yeah.
I don't think social media is by itself the challenge.
Well, I
So
can say my oldest is a junior in college, and she's actually a very traditional girl, and kind of an old soul, and very much wants to be more in a dating type of situation, and
sure.
is kind of dismayed to see that is something that has sort of just dissolved in our culture. So she's just kind of gonna wait, and wait for somebody who is more like-minded and traditional in that way.
Yeah, and I think the courting thing has been, falling out of favor and needs to kind of, come back. And if we're going to protect daughters and our sons, from the consequences of, almost a dehumanizing dating environment in a sense, right? Is what we've kind of started to create. So now your favorite ex social media guru also said something else in the
The one with the
film.
dreadlocks or the good-looking guy?
No, the good-looking guy, right?
Okay, because the dreadlock guy said something that I know probably made you laugh. Towards the end of the film, he said something. The dreadlock guy said something to the effect of, "Ultimately, this is distracting us from all the important issues like climate change." And I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh, Butch is
exactly.
gonna love that."
Right. Yeah. Well, no, I think, I'm a big fan of protecting the environment. I'm pro environment. Um, but no, I think what was funny about the end is they started going through the regulation conversation. Like, we need to do is tax data collection. I'm like, guys, that may not work. I'm just saying, all that's going to do is make it harder for competitors to find their way into the market space and compete. I think if a few people with money come up with membership based, like you pay, everything is going to like $4 or $5 a month now. If we were paying $4 or $5 a month for Facebook and didn't have to look at ads, they would still be making, or something like Facebook, they would still be making some money. And we could create settings that keep us from making an addictive tool. But actually, the other thing that he said, which was really interesting, a little earlier, the dreadlocks guy, and I feel bad. I mean, I'm sure he's a genius, and we're calling him dreadlocks guy.
And he probably has a name too, but
he probably has a name. Of course, we can't remember the name of Dreamy Guy either, right? So it's all fair. But
Dreamy and Dreadlocks, okay.
Dreamy and Dreadlocks. So Dreadlocks said that we have placed deceit at the center of our society. Like social media, it is a deceitful apparatus. The algorithms lie to you, right, about what you actually need and want. And so, and they manipulate your behavior. It's very deceitful, very manipulative. When we put that sort of deceit and manipulation at the center of our society, then the way that we start thinking about how we interact with human beings changes. And that has implications and costs, especially for the younger, but even for all of us. But the Dreamy guy said that there was one major risk, right? He says, the existential threat. Like, what is the threat? And what did he say? What did he say was the danger? What do you think was going to happen?
I don't remember.
Civil war.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right. I mean, that was just, I was just like,
serious.
Yes.
And this is the same guy that says he is strict in his household. And I had heard this before. I heard this a couple of years ago, that all the Silicon Valley execs don't let their kids use social media, like, at all. And they really strict about keeping the kids off the devices. Yeah. But he also said his biggest fear was that civil war was on the horizon because of the aforementioned division and
yes. I mean, when I'm not on social media, I never think in terms of civil war. But sometimes when I'm on social media, I'm like, holy cow, there's a civil war brewing.
Well, I want to say something in defense of Facebook, because I think since we're attacking the social media companies as heartless, cool profiteers that don't care about us. But I will say that the snooze for 30 days button was the most important invention that Facebook has ever come up with. The only thing I would ask is if they could come up with a snooze until after the election button. That would be even better.
Oh yeah. Ooh. I'm just going to kind of do that on my own a little bit. And I'll also say that without Facebook, Butch, you and I probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now. When I met Butch, when I met you, you were standing in the back of your pickup, summer of 1998, maybe
90 something. It was 90 something. Yeah.
You were shouting on the back of your pickup some political conversation with somebody else. Yes, I remember just driving past and thinking, well, that guy seems kind of interesting. Like, he's got something interesting to say.
I don't remember that. So
I
don't remember. I didn't meet you until later, or don't remember meeting you until later.
I
But I
just
didn't really think I
observed
had
what
any
happened.
political opinions back then. What was that?
You were blaring about something, and I was, majoring in political science in school, and I thought, well, he sounds like he's got some opinions. That's interesting. So I
It's
went
weird.
and delivered my books and never saw you again. But then we had some mutual friends on Facebook that sort
Sure.
of brought us together, years after that. And, we've enjoyed some philosophical conversations and whatnot through the years. But without Facebook, that wouldn't have happened. There's been a lot of really cool things that
Sure.
have happened as a result of social media. But just like anything else, hey, food is cool, right? But people do a lot of really weird things with food to destroy their bodies. With all technology, we have to always have that cautionary radar up that addiction is a problem within modern society. Pharmaceutical
Right.
drugs, prolific alcohol everywhere, prolific food, prolific technology. These things have only existed for a couple hundred years, and with them many problems of addiction, and we have to be very
Well,
careful.
and let me also offer that. I mean, we can talk about solutions, and I think overregulation is not my first choice. But and I know that surprises everyone watching or listening here, that I would be cautious about regulating the crap out of social media companies to put them in line, because no, mainly because I don't think it'll work. I think it could make it worse, like often happens with things like that. But I would also offer that, um, the best approach to these things is to do things instead, right? In other words, and I think the more that we as citizens and our kids are grounded in seeking virtue and good and truth and justice and beauty in the world, and I'm, like all the time, and the more time we invest in trying to help develop our minds and our hearts and our souls to be better human beings, then the less likely we'll be so easily manipulated by any number of things, including social media. And I think that's where I think that it kind of misses, that the technology is filling a void. It's filling this hole. Like we've created this big hole. We've decided, well, any number of things over the last generation. We've decided that, sex is just, something we should do casually. We've decided that, teaching kids how to think is not important. We've decided that teaching people how to communicate effectively is not important. We decided all kinds of things about how we interact as society, and and it creates this hole, right? And social media has just come in and filled that time and filled that gap. Um,
Right, I agree. And we have to be careful too with the superficial nature of Facebook. It's really easy for us to kind of in a superficial, inauthentic way feel as though we're getting our community needs met, our social needs that are so part and parcel to being human. But then you could turn around one day and realize that, your 50 Facebook friends that you interact with on a regular basis, that there's some superficiality there, that really maybe at the end
sure.
of the day, your interactions with them aren't the types of interactions that human beings are indeed designed to have.
Right. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Anything else on social dilemma you want to chat about before we wrap it up?
Not really. No, I think we've done a pretty good job. I mean, we've gone all the way from don't let your 9-year-old have it to civil war is coming. And I think we can.
Yeah, we've covered a pretty large gamut. Well, look, I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on. I think this is a good exercise, in trying to. And again, like I said earlier, it's just the first step. There will be
Yeah.
lots of whining and dining and flying across. I think our next one's going to be in the Caribbean.
I hope you work
Um,
the private jet into this, and
oh, absolutely.
the other 399 women who are going to be interviewing for this position, watch out. I'm coming for you. I'm bringing
That's
my
right.
A game. Every round, I'm bringing my A
Jessica's very
game.
competitive in that way, and we know that about her. Well, thanks for coming on, and those who are watching or listening, go have a great conversation. Play by the rules.